Good afternoon, everyone. Turn it down a bit because I tend to talk like a teacher. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm going to share my journey with you. Okay, both in terms of a teacher and also in terms of someone that has executed a program that is very much based on redefining a learning environment. Okay, because I think with the use of new technologies, it allows us to do things that we couldn't do before. Okay, and that's something to keep in mind all the time. Quite often, I get asked the question about, you know, big challenges. What were your greatest challenges? How did you get people on board? You know, what about the naysayers and people that are not interested and so on? And what I talk about is this one word on there, which is belief. Okay? Because for a long time, we concentrated on trying to change people's behaviors. And when you try and change people's behavior, you always get kickback. You always get people that are saying no, and they find behavior difficult to change. But when you change somebody's belief, behavior automatically changes. Okay? And, you know, I can apply that example to a variety of different things, but it's certainly true for technology. We've not approached this program from a technology perspective. This has not been a technology program, this has not been a technology project, this has been a learning program. This is a learning project. So my background really is as a chemistry teacher. So I've taught chemistry there for 11 years. In the last 3 years, I've been involved as part of the leadership team and looking at this as a learning project, providing access and so on. And I'll give you some context about the school in a moment. But outside Essa, I'm also involved with a primary school. You know, so Essa is 11 to 16, about 1,000 students, 140 staff. State school, we don't select our students. Our funding comes from central government, like any other school. But I'm outside Essa, I'm also involved with a primary school and a kindergarten as well. How many primary schools here today? Ooh, lots, okay. And how many high schools or secondary schools? Okay. Any nurseries, kindergarten? Some? Okay, all right. So I'll try and keep things in perspective. But certainly I'm sure there'll be opportunity for questions and answers at the end, and I'll try and put examples of things that I've seen across the board. But one thing that happened early on, in 2008, we were thinking about this idea of learning, okay, and how we can use technology in the right way. I'll take a step back, and first of all, I'll explain about belief. Quite often in education, and certainly technology, I'll use technology as an example. We get given technology that doesn't work. Yeah? We've all experienced that. There are two ingredients. If these two ingredients are present in technology, then we get this thing, this magic thing called adoption. Teachers use it. Teachers that are old, teachers that are young, teachers that feel, I don't use technology, it doesn't work for me. Everybody uses it. Okay? And those two ingredients are simplicity and reliability. If something is simple and it's reliable, it will get used. So take the example of smartboards. Okay? They are not necessarily simple and they are not always reliable. So when teachers get these things in their classroom, the first thing they ask for is professional development. Who's going to give us training? What do we do with these things? How do we use them? And so on. And when teachers don't use them, we'll say, well, you know, they're not actually using technology. But that same teacher will go to a shopping mall, buy a television, and not ask for any professional development. Okay? They use technology because it's simple and reliable. So one of the things that we've done in our school is within every space, we've only used technology that we can buy from a shopping mall. Stuff that is simple and it's reliable. And I remember having this conversation quite a while ago because, you know, the technician at the time, this is 2008, before iPads and tablets were out, the technician telling me that we've got some great news because we had 5 laptop trolleys. Do you know what I mean by the laptop carts? Okay, so we had 5 of those, and it was time to replace them with some more. And we all know the laptop trolley experience, right? As teachers, yeah? You end up having to fight with someone, you win, he comes into your room, and there's always a few that don't connect, yeah? There's sometimes that are not charged, and then you freak out at the teacher who didn't plug it in, okay? Or someone's forgotten their username and password, okay? Anything with a username and password is not simple and reliable, okay? If you have to use usernames and passwords for learning, it's not reliable. So, for £22,000, and apologies, I've not done the calculations, but I'll give you pounds. For £22,000, I could buy a new laptop trolley. This is what the technician was telling me. So I went away, and I had this thing in my head, and I'm thinking to myself, there must be something better. There must be something that is more simple and reliable, instead of buying more laptop trolleys and having that experience. So I remember going to the kindergarten that's around in our community, and I was outside, and I was just listening to some parents, and they came to pick up the children who were 3 and 4 years old, and what they were saying, the discussion that they were having was, my child's 3 years old or 4 years old, but they'll take out my phone, and they'll swipe, and they'll tap on apps, and they'll navigate their way, to whatever they want. They can't read, but they can use my device. Okay? And this idea of simplicity came into mind. So I went away, and I started to look at what could be used that was something similar to that in terms of experience. Then at that time, I came across these devices called iPod touches. Yeah? So it wasn't a mobile phone, but you could browse the internet, okay, through the school filters. You could make notes, you could record video, you could speak into it, you could translate words, you could look things up in dictionaries. There was a calendar on there. You could email a teacher, and a teacher could email you. So all these things that I've said, that doesn't cost anything extra. Okay? We could just start using it. It was simple, and it was reliable. And it was mobile. Students could take it home. So I remember doing this calculation, for one laptop trolley, I can have 180 of these things. So what then happened was that we ended up buying 1,000. Okay? And we gave one to every student, to every member of staff. And it was interesting what we saw. We began to see change. But we began to see people's behavior changing because their beliefs changed. Because every time they used this device, it worked. Okay? So, changing belief is key. And we've looked for opportunities to make that happen. I'm going to share with you a video clip. It's of a little guy that lives with me. He's 1 year old. And he uses my iPad. Okay? Have a look at this.
Come on, Smokey. Switch the camera on. Good boy. Come on, Smokey. Switch the camera. Good boy. Take a picture. Good boy.
Yeah, it takes a selfie as well right at the end. What's really interesting here is that, I know this wasn't part of it. I'm always wary about using this video clip, yeah, because when I show this to teachers, they might be thinking that I'm trying to say that if my parrot can use an iPad, then, but that's not my point. The thing is that I come home in the evening, I sit down, I have my iPad, and he comes out, flies over, that's my armchair, he'll sit there, and what he'll do is he'll try and bite my iPad. He wants it in his beak. Okay? And I'll move it over onto the other side. And then he'll climb over, and I'm always doing this. Okay? If I ever leave my iPad in the room and I'm out, I walk out of the room, I'm always worried. I don't come running back because I think he's going to crack the screen on my iPad. So this one time, so this wasn't training, I just took my phone out and recorded it as it happened. Okay? I turned my iPad round and I tapped on the camera icon. And when I did that, he saw another parrot in there. Okay? And you could see his little brain thinking, you know, that something's happened here. He's moving his head from one side to the other. And then I switched the camera icon off. And then I did it again. And each time I'm doing this, you could see him actually thinking, there's another parrot in there. Okay? And then I turned the camera off, I put the iPad down, and straight away he went for the camera icon. Now, when he tapped his beak on there, it doesn't work. But he figures out really quickly that if he does it with his tongue, it works. Okay? So then I decided to move the icon. You know, you can move the icon here. So I moved the icon. And when I did that, he still goes for the icon, he finds it. You know, it's completely changed his life. If I swipe the screen and there's no app, no camera app, he goes crazy. You know? But he might be a different species, okay? But his belief has changed about this device. One thing he doesn't do is he doesn't bite my iPad anymore. His behavior's changed. Okay? So one of the things that we've done, and maybe this is a leadership approach, and maybe this is a leadership conversation that's going on now, rather than technology, is that his behavior has changed because his beliefs changed. And we've looked, and we continue to look for opportunities to change belief of staff, of students, of parents, of the community, and so on. And I'm going to share with you examples of that as we go along. Let me give you a little bit more context about our school. So, typically speaking, in the past, Essa Academy has only been around since 2009. So we were looking at this program in 2008. We did the whole iPod Touch and one-to-one device thing, you know, early on, before iPads and stuff came about. But in the past, we were considered a failing school. We almost got closed down because our results were really low. Okay? If your attendance is really low, you can get closed down. If your percentage results is really low, you can get closed down. If your budget and finance isn't in order, you can get closed down. Those are really the three main reasons why a state school can get closed down in the UK. We had quite a high budget deficit. Okay? So this was not a school that had lots of money. Okay? There was lots of things that was wrong. Okay? There was very little change. Everything was done the same way for years and years and years. If somebody had left the school 15 years ago, they could come back and it's exactly the same forms that people are filling in. Everything's exactly the same. Okay? World's moved on. School's exactly the same. It's in a time warp. Okay? Our buildings were not impressive. Okay? It did not inspire belief, if you want. Okay? And this was the entrance. You'd walk in and, you know, this is where we'd come in. That's one of the blocks. So Essa Academy started here. We're now in a new building and it's an amazing building. We love it. Okay? But the stuff that I'm going to speak to you about, the change around iPod touches, all the processes that I'm going to speak to you about, all happened in this building. The new building's a fantastic new bonus for us. Okay? But things certainly needed to change. And you know, I can speak to you about change in a big way and lots of different things, and I will do. I'm going to categorize it into certain things. But let me give you a bit more idea about our community. Okay? So, what you see is a heat map from a document that the government produces. Okay? And it shows that 80% of our students come from 10% of the most deprived areas in the UK, measured by different indices. We have a high number of international new arrivals. We have 46 different languages spoken at our school. Typically, if there's a war going on, we get those kids. Many of them will come to us, they don't speak English. Okay? But it's an interesting place. If you walk through, it's I describe it as a cross between the UN and Star Trek. You know, you see all sorts of people walking about and so on. But this presented challenges to us that, you know, that we never had in the past. Okay? And certainly, you know, technology has allowed us to overcome those challenges. But this is quite key for us. So, you know, this particular circle, you can see it right there. Now, I'm just doing this because it's just cool to do it on an iPad here. I don't really need to do that. I could just say, look at those circles, but I won't. Yeah? So right there is where Essa Academy is. Okay? And you can see the darker the area, the more deprived that community is, and the lighter the area, the more affluent the community is. There's some little green dots here, and that's where our students come from. Those are basically the postcodes of our students and where they come from. What this report says is that on average, so they've taken data over a number of years, on average, if you live in the darker areas, you will live 8 years less compared to somebody that lives in the more affluent areas. Okay? On average. This is what statistics are showing. So our driver for change is big. It's about learning. It's about improving life chances. It's about preparing students for that world that doesn't exist yet. It's about looking at skills. You know, how many times do we hear about the toxic mix of unemployed graduates, whilst employers are calling out for, you know, more skills and highly trained students and highly trained people and workforce and so on. So we're beginning to look at the whole picture around that. So there's some key things that we've done, okay? And, you know, I could probably share this with you, and there's probably a lot more stuff that I can speak to you about. But there's 5 key areas that I'm certainly going to share with you because I think they resonate with schools, okay? And these were some big things that we had to do. So one of the first things that we had to look at was we had to look at this idea of building community. This was a school where parents just did not attend. If school contacted you, it meant there's a problem. So you just don't answer the phone. Okay? That was the typical response. I remember chemistry teacher, and then maybe about 4 or 5 years into the job, I took on the responsibility of year welfare leader, you know, and looking after students and pastoral responsibilities and so on. The first day, there'd been an incident, a fight with one of the students and so on out there, so, you know, officiously I went to the office, picked up the phone and, you know, rang the parent, and I'm describing the parent that, you know, your child's behaviour, blah, 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 was involved factored in. So there's silence on the other side of the phone. And then after a pause, the parent says, do I complain to you when he messes about at home? You know? And that was the response. And I'm like, okay. Typical response, okay? Not the type of parents that are really interested in coming to school and so on. Okay? We needed to change that. Okay? We needed to break down barriers, we needed to make things happen. You know, one thing that we realized about building community was the fact that if you want to build community, for us it came down to one thing, and that was about positive relationships. If you have the ability to make good relationships, good things will happen. Okay? So we wanted to look at what things could we do in school on a daily basis that would actually transform that and change that. And there were lots of ideas and lots of things came up. But one thing that certainly was big for us, okay, and everybody agreed on, was food. If you have good food, and people sit at a table where there's good food, and they talk, they get to know each other, you get positive relationships. Okay? You know, you don't know someone, you sit down, you go for a meal, you sit down, you talk, by the end of it, you know them better. So one thing that we did was we actually changed our catering. We went to employ a chef, and he's really passionate about food and so on. Every Sunday evening, he'll email all the students, you know, with a menu for the coming week, you know. You get students that ask him, what does that even mean? It's in French, okay? So some of our students that we get, you know, we get students that have come from all over. We get our local students as well, but we get students that have never really been out to a restaurant. We'll have students that have never seen the sea, okay? So it's a great opportunity for social capital building. And he responds to them, and he emails them, and he tells them what it's about. You know, if something's really good, students will ask him for recipes, and he sends that out to them. you know. And you know, it's a great way of communication and learning and building social capital and all those sorts of things. I even know of staff that send him pictures of desserts and ask him if he can make that, you know. But what's important is that we've changed some of the dynamics in the schools, so where you can only eat in the restaurant. So everybody eats in the restaurant. So we end up with teachers talking to one another that don't normally talk to one another. Okay? You end up teachers sitting with students that wouldn't normally end up, you know, and these are students that they don't necessarily teach. Okay? So you're beginning to get a lot more relationship building. And it goes beyond that. You know, we look for opportunities to make this happen because we're trying to change belief. When we launch iPod Touches, and we do this every year with iPads as well, it's an event that happens. Okay? What we don't do is just give the devices out and parents just sign something and then that's it. We call the parents in, and what we will do is we'll say the event, next week, year 7 are going to get their iPads and they need to come in, you need to be here for 5:30. Parents and the child has to be there. And the event starts at 5:30. If you are late, you will be invited to the next event. And at 5:31, the doors will close. But we find the politest teacher that we can in school, poor teacher, and she stands at the front, and she has letters, and she hands those letters out to parents. And we do that for 2 reasons. Number one, for some of our parents, 5:30, 6:30, 7:30, it doesn't matter, it's all the same. Okay? So punctuality is important, and we need them to understand that. Secondly, what's interesting is that the next time you have an event, they'll be there on time. Okay? But secondly, we need parents to understand the full message of why we are actually trying to do this. It's not about the iPad. It's about the learning, and we need them to understand why. We have a very open discussion with parents about pen to paper. If my child gets an iPad, does that mean they'll never write at school again? You know, because people compare with their own experiences. When I was at school, it was like this, so therefore, what's going to happen? And that's how they compare. The other thing is that a lot of the questions that we get from parents is actually not about learning. It's about 21st century parenting. Safety, security, access, things at home, and so on. And we have that as an open discussion. You know, we have workshops, we show them things on the device that gives them security and gives them control, you know, on the content. And certainly I can share that with you afterwards, because these things have that built in. Okay? And parents can have complete control of that at home. So that's quite key. But when parents come in, so 5:30 they've come in, the first thing that happens is that there's some food laid out. And teachers meet with parents. And they speak to them and they build relationships. And they're not complaining about their children, okay? But they're actually speaking to them, you know, about what they do. And it's about building positive relationships. Then they'll come into the hall and we begin to really speak to them about why we're doing this. What's important for us, and this has been key, and you know, and schools that are looking at iPads and schools that are looking at tablets, I say this to them, this circle is so essential. And I call it, I've written securing accountability. But actually, the more I speak about this and the more I think about this, I think that circle should change to transparency. When you make something transparent, it's open, right? Everybody can see it. When everybody can see it, you want to make sure that whatever, if your name's attached to it, it's got to look good. Okay? So we've done a number of things. Number one, we've made things very transparent with parents. We told them what we're doing and why we're doing it. We secure accountability from parents. iPads must be brought in every day. They must be fully charged. If they're not, somebody will come to your house. Somebody will come to your workplace. And we expect the device to be brought in. We did that a few times. That's not a problem anymore. Okay? So we've managed that process. And you'll hear that term again later on, managing processes. But this is not a technology project. This is a learning project. So securing accountability and making things transparent, for me, is very much about learning. I'm going to give you an anecdote, yeah, because I need you to understand the word plumbing, okay? Because I'll make reference to it all the way through. And in order to understand what I mean by plumbing, I'm going to tell you a story. So this is a story I heard a long time ago, and it's about a guy who lives in a village in India, okay? And one day he ventures out and he goes into the city. And when he gets into the city, he sees a large crowd of people there. So he pushes into the crowd and sees what's new, you know. And he sees this amazing thing. He sees this contraption that's sticking out of the wall. And when you twist it at the top, water comes out. He's fascinated. He thinks, wow. So what he does is he buys one of these things. He goes back to his village, gathers all the people, tells them, I'm going to change your life. No more buckets, no more ropes. This thing is amazing. Sticks it into the wall, twists it, and nothing comes out. Okay? The reason why I say that story is because iPads, they are like taps. You can browse, maybe, you can get some apps on there, but actually, to get the good stuff, you need to have the plumbing in place. So for me, a lot of the security, accountability, and transparency is about the plumbing. And what do I mean by the plumbing? So for us, the plumbing boils down to something called iTunes U. Okay? So iTunes U is a platform. It's a learning platform. It's actually not something that's new. It's been around for a long time. But universities have been using it, hence iTunes U for university. Universities have been using it for a long time. And we're not talking about small universities here and there. We're talking about all the big players that we know as universities. We're talking about Stanford, Oxford, MIT, Cambridge, Open University. All these guys have been putting content and courses on there for a long, long time. But what's happened now is that we, as educators, as people that are in schools, primary or secondary, have access to be able to not just use that content, but to be able to create content on there. The reason why this is so crucial, and why I describe it as the plumbing, is because what we've done at our school is that every teacher plans their lesson on iTunes U. That's a non-negotiable. Why? Because it's transparent. And what does transparent mean? It means that nobody plans a rubbish lesson anymore. Okay? Because it's open and everybody can see it. And parents can see it. And when a teacher plans a lesson and hits save, all the students get it on their devices. There's no login, there's no usernames, there's no passwords. It's direct from teacher to student. Okay? There's no technician involvement with this. It's using things like notifications, yeah? So when you get an SMS, when you get a message, okay, you don't keep checking your phone every few minutes. It stays in your pocket. You hear a ping, you check. Okay? So, same goes for the learning. When new content gets published, it pops up on the iPad. Students can see it. You just put a new lesson on there. There's some new content that I need to do. Okay? What it's allowed us to do is we've been able to make sure that we can group teachers together. So if teachers want to plan together, they can do that as a group. So the department gets to make the best possible content, pedagogically, you know, that is possible with that team of people. Okay. So this isn't about every teacher planning their own lesson or every theme bit of work. Okay. This is about many heads coming together and creating content and learning journeys, as I call them, okay, whether it's a 9-week theme or a 6-week theme that your school works with, or whether it's a GCSE course or an IB course that your particular department is doing in a high school, teachers get to plan that and put that together. And what's important about that is that it allows me to create a really powerful quality assurance system that allows me to measure how well learning is being delivered. Okay? Yes, I need to go into the classroom. Before, I had to go into the classroom and see what's going on. Now, even before the classroom, we can see what's happening. We can see what the outputs are for students. Okay? And it's allowing us to change the way in which learning happens. What it also means is that once I've made my course for this year, next year we focus on making it better. Okay? And we can really weave in those things that matter in the classroom. Higher order thinking, okay? Substantive conversation between students, presenting knowledge as a problem, connecting the learning to the world, okay? Bringing in experts. A teacher can design that in a really simple way. And that's really, really key in the way in which learning happens. What we like about this is that it's changed conversations at home. Parents are no longer asking their children, what did you do in school today? You know, parents get to see the content. And when parents come in on that evening that I mentioned, we launched this as a family program. We don't launch it as a one-to-one program or a student program. It is one-to-one, okay? But we actually launch it as a family program. Parents can pick up their child's iPad and everything is available for them to see. They can see content, they can see lessons, they can see stuff coming up next week. They know when exam dates are going to be and so on. And that becomes quite powerful. And I think what I will do, and I think this will probably be useful, is I'm just going to break out this presentation. I think it's going to be worthwhile for you to actually see examples of this, okay? And see what it actually looks like. Because for the first time, we're beginning to see things in terms of the way in which learning is designed, okay? We're beginning to link with schools abroad and internationally. We're being able to bring professors in virtually and help design the course and content as well, okay? And it's allowing us to do things that we just couldn't do before. So, just plug my iPad in, and are we on? Yes? There we are. Okay. It is now. So, here we are. So, bottom right-hand side, if I just tap on the app there, I Choose You is a free app. Okay? And that's what it looks like. So, this is what the students experience. Okay? This is what the students experience. Sound in as well? Okay. So, typically speaking, I Choose You. What you see there is a variety of different things. Okay? Each one of these are courses. Okay? Can you see the top left one? It says awaiting approval. Because I've asked to join a teacher's class. And the teacher will approve me joining that class. So not anybody can just join. Once I've joined, I don't have to worry about usernames and passwords anymore. Every time the teacher makes a new content, it's there. I've got it. Okay? So we've been running this for 2 years, and not once has anybody come up to me and said, I put a Word document on I Choose You and the students haven't got it. Okay? It works. It's simple, it's reliable, so much so that we're now creating learning frameworks around this. We're doing measurements on it. We're looking for new qualities and new ideas and new outputs for students learning. Okay? So look, lots of stuff that's there. Each one of these things that you see are not books. These are actual courses designed by teachers. And they are designed by multiple teachers. Okay? It gives me transparency because I could go to, let's just say I went to, there's an English one here that actually, maybe are. So this is GCSE English one that's in the middle. If I tap on that, it opens up And ignore all that content there, but on the bottom there's 4 buttons. If I tap on the info button, this is what the teachers have written. And it's about this course. So every time a parent goes on here, they can see everything about this particular course. This isn't about options evening, where parents just get a look at something on the night and then they've forgotten what it's all about. This is accessible all the time. If the teacher changes this now, it will reflect the change here now. Okay? And, you know, we've created a bit of a template that works in our context. So, instructor is about the strand or the department. You may decide in your school that actually this is about my teacher. And me as a teacher, I want to be on there. Okay? Just the fact that you can email the teacher becomes really powerful. Because we're not getting teachers, we're not getting parents ringing up reception and leaving messages about learning, wanting to know about this and that. They can do that from home. Parents can do this, students can do this, and the messages go to the right people. And that's key. So there's structure in this, in the way in which your organization operates. Okay? This is where the fun begins, because each of these things that you see, tap on the button at the top, and it gives me a lesson by lesson view. So I'll go to lesson number 1. There's my lesson outcomes. Very clearly labeled. Okay? And in the UK, if you don't have lesson outcomes, our inspectorate bodies will know, yeah, Ofsted, they get really finicky about it. And what teachers will do is they'll come in the lesson and they'll write all their lesson outcomes on the board. And then when the class leaves, they quickly get back up there again and write all the lesson outcomes again, you know, for the next class. Okay? So we describe that as busyness. That's not business. Business is learning. Technology allows us to remove busyness. Okay? So we've been inspected since then, and the Ofsted guys came along and looked at this, and it was stuff that they hadn't seen before. But what we really like about this is the fact that, you know, we've got this idea where content is made available to students. They can watch, listen, read before they come to the class. Homework is not 15 questions. Student gets stuck on question 10, and there's nobody at home to help them out. This is information that they can absorb, watch, listen, read. That's what we put as prior knowledge. What we like about this is we can make use of things like iBooks. You just embed it in there. The idea of apps, you know. We're now actually putting apps within iTunes U. So, we've not got a list of all the science apps, of all the literacy apps, of all the numeracy apps. We can put whatever app we want to put in there because it's right for the pedagogy. It's right for the thinking. It's helping students to cognitively move on with their thinking. So I can be in a science lesson and the teachers put an animation app and the task is use the animation app to animate some Play-Doh and explain covalent bonding. And if a student can do that, you've measured cognition. Explain everything. You've come across Explain Everything as an app? Okay. You put that in there, you're asking students to describe, you're asking students to analyze, this critical thinking. It's the higher order thinking stuff that you're getting them to do. It's simple, it's reliable, it works, it's transparent, there's no usernames and passwords. Okay? And that's really quite key for us. So, if I just come out of this, and let me show you, so some of these courses can be made public so the whole world can see it, or you can have courses that are private. Nobody sees it. Most of our courses are private. Why? I don't want teachers to worry about copyright and all that sort of stuff at the moment. We have got some teachers that are now beginning to put things that are public, you know, and that knowledge capital is being shared and people are looking at that and so on. But actually teachers can feel quite safe to operate in that environment and only allow those people that they want. Okay? So, the way in which teachers are presenting their content to students, that's changing. And this is really important, okay? Because teachers understand pedagogy. They understand what the next steps in learning should be. That's not something, you know, that somebody else could come and give us. So even with publishers and textbooks, okay? If I open a textbook, I'm going to get 3 or 4 pages on photosynthesis, some pictures, text, and probably some questions. So for us, I can do one search on photosynthesis, come up with video content, YouTube content. I can come up with lots and lots of different content. iTunes U is allowing me to glue that together. Making content, sharing it with students, and giving them instruction is completely different now. Have a look at this.
Your task is to watch the video of the 3 witches in the opening scene back there. The video is attached to the first assignment on task 1. As you watch, please think of 10 really exciting and original adjectives to describe the 3 weird sisters, as they're called. It's up to you how you note these down. You could write them on Notes app if you're a visual learner. If you prefer, you could use an app such as Audio Note to record them. Or if you're a kinesthetic learner, you can write them down on Poplet and create a mood board with some pictures as well. If you need any support, there is an iBook on adjectives to remind you what they are. If you want to stretch yourself, try and also think of 2 metaphors to describe the witches. Once you've got your 10 metaphors,
you get the idea, okay? And that's simply a keynote, PowerPoint presentation, voice recorded on top, output as a video, boom, on iTunes U, everybody's got it. One student might watch that 5 times, another one might watch it 10 times, someone might go back, and the ability to do that is really powerful. For a teacher to stand up and give instruction once and everybody just to understand that, okay, it's just not going to happen. Because everybody's different. We know about personalization. Okay? Everyone is different. Everybody learns in different ways. You can get a really rubbish lecture, put it on a video, and it will become a good one. Why? Because students will fast forward the rubbish bits. And they'll get to the bit that they want to hear. And they'll get to the bit that they don't actually understand. Okay? So what we really like about iTunes U, and I'm just going to pull this out just one moment. Okay? What we really like about iTunes U, because when I plug it in, it won't show it to me, but students use this all the time, is that, look, I can carry on playing this video, but on the top right hand side, so this is within iTunes U, I can tap on this pen icon, and I can make notes as the video is playing. And I can pause, and I can go back, and I can carry on making my notes, and I can do that in multiple languages. And it puts, you might not be able to see it from there, it puts little red dots where I made a note. So if I go back to that red dot, it goes to that point in the video and it shows me my note. Now think about pedagogy and cognition. How would your tasks and what you're asking students to do in the class be different? It'd be completely different. There's no way you'd show a video once and then that's it. You know, students can have access to that. And for me, that idea of access is really important. You know, because what we're finding is that students are going back to lesson 1 nearer the exam time and watching those videos again, watching that content again, okay, and that's really powerful, okay. And if I go back, just one more, let me show you a certification module. So this is nearer to exam times, yeah. So this course, Revision Blast. That was a course that a teacher put together for her class. She's got 27 students in her class. On iTunes U, she's got 168 students in her class. She passed the code to her class. So the kids put the code in to join her class. She approved them. And then one of the other students must have seen this course. And they said, I want that. So that student gave them the code. And then the code went on Twitter and Facebook and all the stuff that kids use, yeah? And it was simple because it notifies the teacher that these students want to join your class. She looked at the names, she knows that the year 11 students coming up to exams, and she said, yes, let them join, no problem. But what was good was this, okay? Look, she's giving them support, yeah? Tap on this, just watch this video. Watch how simple it is, how effective it must be for a student that's preparing to do an exam.
Okay everybody, this is some guidance about how to identify the purpose and audience and form of a writing task. Now, these are two questions that appeared on the exam last year. The first one says, write a letter to your head teacher or principal suggesting a charity that will benefit from money raised by students. And the second one says, write a magazine article for young adults advising them how to deal with bullying. Now, in each of the tasks, I've outlined the purpose in black. You'll notice that the purpose is a verb, it ends in ing. The first one says suggesting, and the second one says advising. Now, if you're suggesting, you're offering ideas. You're not offering ideas in a really forceful way when you try.
And you get the idea, okay? What I love about this shows simple and reliable. That's an image from Safari, yeah, on the iPad. Everybody knows that, right? But look on the top left-hand side. She's gone to the English website and downloaded the PDF. You can see that on that tab, English GCSE. Then on the top right-hand tab, she's Googled how to take a screenshot of your iPad. And she's just taken a screenshot, she's put it in Explain Everything, and just recorded her voice on top. Created a video, up on iTunes. Simple. Okay? But what we're finding is content like this is just so wanted by students. The fact that I can go back, I can listen, I can watch, I'm personalizing my own stuff, I'm bringing it back, and it's all on one ecosystem. Yeah? So for me, this idea, you know, of learning is becoming really, really powerful. You know, we use part of the plumbing. We were using apps like Shobi, you know, that allow us, you know, to have classes on there, where we can give feedback, and every teacher can give feedback to students, you know. So there's tasks that they've done in iTunes U, and then, you know, they're getting feedback by the teacher in terms of the work that they've done. You know, they can upload assignments, and the teacher's marked it, and you're able to annotate and review and so on, you know, about work and assignments, and you can timestamp, and you can have multiple teachers in here. So again, quality assurance. How good is the quality of feedback that you're giving your students? Is it just a case of well done? Or is it a case of well done, but in order to get to the next grade, you need to do X, Y, and Z? What we also like about this, tap on the plus icon, voice note. I'm not going to do this now, because otherwise this will go to the student, yeah? But I hit record, and I have to speak into it and give that student verbal advice, whatever it is, give them information, mark it for them. Parents see this. Or I can speak to the whole class. Yeah? How many times do we mark stuff, books, and we're putting the same thing down on each book, because we've all made the same mistake? Maybe that's a reflection on us, yeah? If everyone's made the same mistake. But on the shared folder bit at the top, I can speak into that, everybody gets that message. It removes busyness, we're focusing on business. And that's quite key. Look, many of our iTunes U assignments will ask students to put pen to paper and do work like that. That's fine. But if they want it marked really quickly, they take a snapshot and send it to teacher through Shobi. Okay? So that becomes really powerful. And really, that's part of our plumbing. So I'm going to go back to the presentation, and there's a few points that certainly I want to talk about. But the idea of plumbing is essential. You know, if that plumbing is not in place, and people don't understand that plumbing, teachers don't understand the plumbing, if parents don't understand the plumbing, then what happens, it becomes a major issue. And people don't really understand what's happening and why it's happening and so on. If the plumbing's not in place, what I see, iPads end up in a cart. And And 6 months down the line, 1 year down the line, it's just the interested few teachers are using them. Okay? And it's another project that was a good idea, but actually, you know, now nothing's happening with it. So, one of the other things that we've done in the Green Circle, we've actually used time to develop people. So one of the things that we've done with this, and in the UK, typically, most schools have inset days or training days, yeah? So one day every so often, typically about 6 days or 7 days in a year, are set aside for training. What we've done is we've taken those 6 days, and we've taken 2 hours from that pot of time, and we've added it on every week. So every week there is professional development. Now the question is, what's that professional development about? Is it training on iPads? The answer to that is no. Okay? That training is driven pedagogically. So what I mean by that is this. What we won't do is, let's learn how to use iMovie. Let's learn how to use iTunes U. We won't have training that's featured in that way. What we will do is we'll say, okay, let's have a look at higher order thinking. All teachers understand that. Okay? What is it? Why is it important? How do we incorporate it within our class? Are there any tools that allow me to deliver higher order thinking in a really good way? Now, iMovie is a great tool for higher order thinking. Why? Because I can record video before and after, okay? Or I can record 2 videos and play them side by side at the same time. And I can record my voice that analyzes and evaluates and critical thinking and so on, okay? And analysis and evaluation on Bloom's triangle is at the top. It's high order thinking, okay? So teachers learn how to use iMovie, but they've learned it in context with pedagogy. Assessment for learning. One of the things to talk about is the difference between teaching and learning. Okay? And do teachers really understand what's the difference between teaching and learning? There's a gap in between, and sometimes a huge gap. A teacher jumps up on the front really tired at the end of the day. They think that a lot of learning's gone on, but actually there isn't. Okay? So how do we make sure learning's happened? Learning requires measurement. It requires feedback. You know, it's not about asking students, do you understand? The students say yes, and let's just move on to the next bit. But there are apps that allow assessment for learning to happen. Okay? So things like Socrative, Showbie, okay? Neopod, you're getting feedback from students. You can do a temperature check of how much cognition, how well students actually understood something. You know? It'll show me how many students have given me a response. In the past, companies and, you know, they'd come and sell us those clicker things. I don't know if you remember, if you had that here. You know, everybody voting systems and all that sort of stuff. Well, Socrative is a free app. It does that all day long. Okay? But teachers can use that dynamically. So we're beginning to look and develop things around that. We've spent a lot of time managing processes. Okay? This is really important for us. What I mean by managing processes is we look for opportunities for all those other circles to be incorporated into our processes. In the past, we would have very much a hierarchical structure. I suppose we still have a hierarchical structure at Essa as well. And we have people at the top, and decisions are made at the top, and there's layers and so on. But which people should be involved in that process? How do we solve a particular problem? We recognize that problem needs to be solved. But typically, it's always the same people at the top that are trying to solve that problem. So we don't do that now. What we do now is we look at the problem and we just pull all the right people that we need to solve that problem. And that might include the caretaker, it might include the chef, it might include the polite teacher at the front, because the problem is we need to get these iPads out with the right messaging and the right thing for parents and so on, and who do I need to make that happen? Once that problem's solved, that team no longer exists. Okay? So that's a key area around the way in which we manage our processes. So, last circle, securing vision. This is so key. What is it that we're trying to do? What is it that, you know, I describe it as a rainbow. If you have little children and you see a rainbow, okay, usually in the car they want to go there. Let's go to the rainbow. It looks really nice. That's the place where we want to be. Okay. Now, whether we will get there or we don't get there, we don't know that. But we've got to take steps, even if there are small steps in that direction. And that's really important. It doesn't matter how big the steps are, but as long as we're taking steps in the right direction. So for us, and our rainbow is very much all three words. It's all, will, and succeed. All is everyone. It's will and not can. And success is about results. Okay? But success is also about preparing students for that future, for that world that doesn't exist, for jobs that haven't been invented. You know, and that's really quite key. So what does that mean? And for me, a lot of that is about moving away from secretarial type skills to CEO skills. Secretarial type skills, students get given a task and each student is just sat there just doing that task, typically using office packages and so on, and they're just doing it in a very mundane sort of way. Okay? CEO type tasks are very different. It's about solving problems. Here's a problem, I want you to solve it. Student walks away. They typically use devices like this. They will find lots of different tools that help them to solve that problem. It's not just about consumption of information. It's about creation of information, and it's about collaboration as well, which is what we are looking for in the design of the iTunes U courses. That is something that teachers can design. That is something that somebody else can't design that for us. And we need to tweak it and change it. So it needs to be dynamic. Okay? And that's quite important. Okay? It's also about changing things in terms of the way in which learning happens. I'm just going to move off that one. I'm going to come on to this one. Right at the beginning, we talked about this as access. Yeah? This is about providing access to all students in an equitable way. Okay? So one of the things that was important for us is that we wanted our students, you know, to be able to have the best technology, the best devices. We wanted our staff to be able to have that. And it was about access at home. It was about knowing that actually 10% of our students don't have the internet at home. Another 5 or 6% have the internet but no Wi-Fi at home. So they needed to be able to use content offline as well. And iTunes U allows for that to happen. Okay? and that's really important for us. We needed to understand why. And you know, right at the beginning, we wanted to move teachers on. And we wanted their thinking to be different. And I remember in 2008, 2009, when I suggested 1,000 iPod touches, apart from the fact that the principal said to me that, you know, if this doesn't work, you've lost your job. Okay? And I'll probably lose mine as well from the board. I remember doing a search for 19th century surgery. And when I did that, this is what I got. Okay? Probably what we would expect, right? Surgery, looking like surgery in somebody's kitchen. You know, lots and lots of people, scary person at the door. Yeah? If I type in 21st century surgery, I get something really different. Okay? And this is probably what we would expect. It's a lot more accurate, you know. 21st century surgery, a lot more accurate. It's going to be successful, less painful. Okay? Now, what we say, this is the word that I want to introduce you to. What we say is surgery has been redefined. And as teachers, certainly when we're using technology and the way in which we use technology, we need to understand what redefinition means. And you'll probably all think back in your own school environments of how much redefinition you're seeing. But this is redefinition. How do we know that? Because if I took that surgeon and I put him in this space, he'd be stuck. He'll probably think this is some sort of sorcery or magic or something. Okay? Now, I did exactly the same thing. 19th century classroom, learning, education, we get this. Okay? Interesting. It's probably what you'd expect. There's a teacher at the front. She's probably saying something, or he's probably saying something to the kids. 21st century classroom, 21st century learning. So this is 2008, probably December time it was. Okay? Lots of images came up. The one that stuck out for me was that. Now, there were some nicer images, some really amazing images, but actually it was just better furniture, better chairs, better tables, yeah, nicer flooring, and so on. If I took this teacher and put them in this room, they could probably carry on doing their job quite happily. Yeah? What we say is this is substitution. Translation. That's what we don't want. So, examples of substitution. Let me give you 2 examples. First one. Front of that room, there's probably a chalkboard. Or there might be a whiteboard with a whiteboard marker. Or, if the school's forward thinking, interactive whiteboard. Yeah? And if they really want to show off, maybe a touch screen. It's an example of how we do the wrong things really well. Take ideas, don't work, stick with it. Another idea of translation, substitution. I used to have a worksheet. I made it with a pen and a ruler. Then somebody introduced me to Microsoft Word. I've now got the same worksheet, but it's on Microsoft Word. And then one day, someone came in and showed me this thing. It's a projector, and introduced me to PowerPoint. Now I've got the same worksheet, but my lines can come flying in from top and bottom. You know, words that dissolve, and so on. Okay? It's the same worksheet. Take it a step further. Same worksheet is on iTunes U. Translation. Substitution. We need to redefine. How do we know redefinition works? It's when technology is allowing us to do things that we could not do before. Okay? I can stop time, record, analyze, play back, everybody can see it. It works seamlessly. I can annotate video. I can record 2 things and put it next to one another and talk about it. I can Skype in context with my learning and communicate with the classroom in a different place. I've designed my iTunes U course. I'm learning about science, but actually there's, we're looking at one particular aspect of, I don't know, I'll keep using chemistry examples, but, we're looking at graphene, and we've got a lecturer from a university somewhere else who's helped design task 2 and task 3 of that particular iTunes U course. It's different. It redefines. Okay? We've stuck to simple and reliable. We've looked for things that are simple and reliable. Do you know how things become simple and reliable? Because we look at an ecosystem. Do you know what I mean by an ecosystem? Is when I've bought an iPad, it's expensive, okay? I'm not just talking to you now, but bought an iPad, it's expensive, okay? But I've got an ecosystem. I've got iTunes U that works with it, and it works really well. Okay? I buy an Apple TV, I stick it into my room, and what's happened? My iPad becomes, I can do a lot more with it. Whatever's here comes up on there. Okay? I've invested in technology, I buy a Mac or something like that. I'm now making iBooks, and I'm making that happen on there. Okay? The reason why we've gone for this is not because, we looked at which tablet and this and that. Yes, you know, it's expensive. It'll just take us longer. We went slower. But we're taking the right steps to the vision. Okay, and that's really important. And I'm saying this to schools. You know, schools buy a laptop trolley, an iPad trolley. They've only got money for 30 iPads, so they buy a cart. Okay? And then that cart is being shared by so many teachers and so on. What I'm saying to people is take the cart, do it with one class, the iPads go home, they come back, and start it like that. Because you know what? To manage an iPad cart across so many classes, you're introducing busyness. I bet you, those schools that are doing this, they've got some person ripping their hair out, yeah, trying to put apps on there, trying to work out email, trying to do this, trying to run updates, looking at Apple IDs and so on. It's not what it's designed for. Okay? Have faith. Do something that's different. Yes, you will be afraid because it's new. Okay? But devices go home. Do you know what that will do? Parents will come back at you and say, how comes this class is doing this and our class isn't? Okay? And the school will say, this is how much money we have, and this is what we can do now. In some schools, and I'm not talking about the UK now, I'm talking about countries like India, where if they've got the option to repair the roof or buy technology, they'll buy technology. Okay? I've been in schools where they've got one-to-one, okay, and the roof has literally been stuck together with plastic carrier bags and stuff, but they'd rather spend the money on this. Why? Because it allows you to expand time. Students take the content home, they carry on learning, they're creating, they're collaborating. Okay? And they do it little by little. Sometimes parents have come in and said, well, actually, you know, we have iPads at home. Sometimes parents have come in and said, we contribute. Sometimes parents have come in and said, okay, what's the next class? What's the program? This is the plan. What I'm saying is we do it step by step. We're building on a vision. We're doing one room at a time, one class at a time. But what it allows the school to do is to get the plumbing in place. What it's allowing the school to do is to look at the reality of devices going home, coming back, emails, communication, and so on. And it's giving you a real life taste of what it's going to look like. Having an iPad trolley in a cart that doesn't go home, that's not really giving you a flavour of anything, apart from what's done in the classroom. You've substituted, you've translated what was the iPad, what was the laptop trolley. Okay? And that's what we want to avoid. Because when we start doing that, we get to do the real stuff, you know? Which is very much for me about this idea of personalization. Knowing that every student is different. And because every student is different, you know, they need to work in different ways. If I gave you all a map, okay, and you're going to walk around Durban, and everybody had the same map. Some people will walk on the left-hand side, some people will walk on the right-hand side, some will go fast, some will run, some will go slow, some will get lost. I choose you, and the courses that our teachers have created are maps of learning. And students can go at their own speed. Okay? And the teacher's there as the cognitive guide. Someone that will slow down the ones that are going too fast. Speed up the ones that are going too slow. The ones that are lost, correct them. Okay? And it's it's giving teachers more time, because you know what? Teachers are not doing, well, here's the next worksheet, or everybody stop now. Now we're all going to go on to the next bit. Okay? If I ask you to put your hands up if you've got more than one child of your own, put your hands up. Okay, put your hands down. Now put your hand up if your children are exactly the same. But yet in a classroom of 25 students, 30 students, they'll get the same textbook. They start at the same time. We expect them to finish at the same time. Okay, and sometimes they get detention if they don't finish at the same time. Okay, we're getting them to do the same activities. When we've enabled iTunes U in the classroom, one student is watching a video 3 weeks ago that was there, because they can go back and watch it again, because they never understood something or they heard something there and they want to link it to here. Another student is doing something else. There are times when the teachers will say, okay, this lesson, we're all going to do this particular bit. Okay? There are times when the teacher will say, this lesson, we're going to do an experiment. There are times when teachers will say, okay, today we're going to do something a little bit different. But what we're beginning to see is the way in which the courses are designed reflect real learning. So teachers are now beginning to design courses that have experiences outside the classroom. We're learning about plants. What are we doing in the classroom? When we've got a school garden and there's a park nearby. I Choose You course, the teachers have created that content. It's asking students to do activities in the park. It's giving them apps that they can use out there. You know? So the design of that learning begins to change. And you know, we're beginning to see this transformation. I put this image up because for me, this is quite interesting. These two girls, Sumaya is the girl on the left-hand side. She's a refugee, came to our school, speaks 5 languages or so. This was three weeks before a final exam. I put this image up because we were at the UNESCO conference in Paris. And it was about girls' education. And the whole Malala incident and stuff had happened. Malala had come to the UK, she was being treated there, and so on. And on stage were world dignitaries. We're talking prime ministers and presidents. And we were invited to speak on stage. So we took 2 of our girls to go over and to speak on stage. We want them to develop social capital. Okay? We want them to develop other experiences. So we didn't want them to miss out on this. We were there for 2 days. They had internet connection whilst they were in the building. They carried on with, they only spoke for 20 minutes, but they carried on with all the iTunes U stuff. They carried on with Shobi and teachers were giving them feedback. They didn't miss out on any learning. At all. They could see what other students were doing. Okay? So this has allowed us to do things that we couldn't do before. I'm going to go through some of these things really quickly because these are things that we're now looking at within our iTunes U environment. Learning is a moral imperative. I've talked about the difference between teaching and learning. There's a gap in between. We're looking for courses that are focusing on learning rather than on teaching. We're looking for tools that allow us to measure that. We're looking at the idea of modifiability. The fact that cognition is not fixed. Okay? And we're getting teachers to understand how does learning work? What's the next step? If I'm going to learn about, I don't know, chemistry, and I'm talking about periodic table, what's the next step that I should be teaching my students? And we're getting them to have real discussions about that. So they're designing one course, not multiple courses, but there's lots of thinking and design that's going into it. Because cognition is not fixed. There's no such thing as a student that can't do maths. You've just got to find the right route for them. Okay? Because quite often, students get this thing, I can't do maths. And they believe that. Grow into adults believing that. Okay? But lots of research show actually cognition is not fixed at all. Look, this is an interesting one. This is something new that we're beginning to look at now. But creativity is something that organizations and companies are really looking for in people. How do you measure creativity? So we've started to do a bit of research. We've got a bunch of teachers together, you know, that are looking at how do you measure creativity? It's a really hard thing to do, you know. But we're looking at the design of courses, okay, and looking at outputs, you know. So how, when a student makes something, when a student does a task, how fluent are they? How many responses have they given? Okay. How many different types of responses have they given? What's the detail like? How original is it? Okay? So we're beginning to look at that. And we can do that because I can see all my courses. I'm not having to go into each and every lesson. I'm not having to ask teachers to come to me and say, give me all your lesson plans and let me have a look at how you're designing that. That's not happening anymore. Okay? So this has become quite key for us. So, let's finish off. Impact. This is really important for us. Our results certainly matter. parents look at that. You know, we've had, you could say, quite a good degree of success over the last few years. Okay, the data that you're seeing is the percentage 5 or more grade A stars to C's. How many students have got 5 or more grade A's to C's? That's a national measure. In the past, we were as low as 36%. We've been in the 20s as well. That was when we almost got closed down. Okay? And the circles that you see are just things that we've introduced. They haven't stopped. So the green circle A access, it's not stopped. We've carried on working on that as we've gone along. Okay? And there's a degree of sustainability that we've seen in this. So, this is an interesting slide. I put this up to teachers. Because teachers, anywhere you go in the world, are expert photocopiers. They can even fix photocopiers and everything. Open up panels that you didn't know existed. Yeah? Remove paper jams and all sorts. What's interesting for me is that, coming back right to the beginning, beliefs have changed. That's what this slide tells me. Our finance guy will look at it and he'll say, wow, £30,000 to £9,000, that's a saving. That's actually not a saving. That's gone into the quality of device. That's gone into more bandwidth. So textbooks, the money that we save from textbook has gone into bandwidth. Because that's what a textbook is information. And information is the internet, and you can access. So I'd rather put that money into there. And I'm going to get a lot more information, and different types of information. And it's going to be audio, visual, and so on. So textbooks, for me, that information interprets or translates into infrastructure. Okay? This, and our reduction here, has translated into content, devices, apps, and so on. Okay? 70% reduction in printing. In 2010, the 30,000 pound figure, that was over 1 million sheets of paper. Okay? Now, this is not us telling teachers you can't print or removing photocopiers. Only 2 months ago, we got rid of 5 photocopiers because the lease ended, we weren't using them. Excuse me. What we're finding is that teachers will take a snapshot with their device and email it. They'll use apps to annotate and send it out. They put it on iTunes U, every student's got it. Simple. When I look at this slide, for me, this represents a change in belief. Why? Because I've seen behaviours change. Teachers are not walking into classroom with 30 sheets of paper anymore. I'm not seeing the Monday morning rush. I've been saying this. Imagine if printers could tweet. What would they tweet on a Monday morning? And teachers are waiting in a queue. Some people are driving like maniac and rushing in to try and get their printing done for the week and so on. This has changed things. Okay? So, all in all, interesting journey. You know, lots of things that we've learned along the way. Lots of mistakes have been made as well. Important ones. Okay? But with all these sorts of journeys, it's always about starting again. And at the moment, we're now looking, we feel like we're starting because the transparency element is there on the learning. For the first time, we can actually see our courses and content. We can say, well, why is this being taught in this way? And why is this like this? And what do we need to bring in for here? And actually, that school over there has got a really good science department. Our physics bit is not working too well. Let's see if we can get that teacher to work on our iTunes U courses and support us in this way and so on. And we're sending invitation, bringing people in. And there's a lot of stuff that's going on that we were just unable to do before. Okay? And it's really getting us to think in a different sort of way. Policies and procedures. If you come as a new teacher at Essa, you don't have an induction course, you just get put on an iTunes U course. All the policies, procedures, content, all of that stuff is on here. your video thing, you get introduced and so on. The primary school that I'm working with, each class has an iTunes U course. You want to send a letter home, upload it on there, everyone's got it. You make a newsletter, audio, visual and all that sort of stuff, forget colour printing, make some real content. With audio, video content and so on, you've gone on a trip, you've recorded that, you've put that into Book Creator, uploaded it onto iTunes U as an EPUB sort of thing, boom, parents have got it. Powerful, it's free. Significant change in process, people, personnel, okay? Operational efficiencies. These are big things, allowing us to rethink stuff, get rid of things that we don't need. So I'm going to leave you with one question, and then you can ask me questions if need be. Okay? But thank you very much for listening.